NewsNation contributor Chris Cillizza, Chris Steyerwalt, NewsNation political editor, host of The Hill Sunday, Mark Short, White House Legislative Affairs Director. That's not him. He's over there. This is Rina Shah, CEO of Rila Strategies, former senior staffer to 2 Republican members of Congress, and Mark Short. At the end, Sir Steyerwalt, a first 100 days that started about the border and DOGE and DEI ends the economy, the economy, the economy. Is that good or bad for Donald Trump?
Well, it's bad if it keeps going this way. Look, 100 days is not a very long time. Franklin Roosevelt instituted the idea of give me 100 days and we're going to change the world. And every president since then has either been blessed or damned by that standard. The Trump White House did an extraordinary amount of PR and spin and pushing forward into this. And this was sort of the capstone to it, his participation in this town hall. But you know, look, if you had to give him a grade now, he'd be flunking because, and I think it basically comes down to this. He came in with low expectations 8 years ago. People thought he would be bad, and he beat those expectations. He came in with high expectations this time because nostalgia for his administration before COVID. He is coming up short of those expectations, and they're punishing him for it.
Mark, in terms of what he has done, and poll numbers show this, most consequential, most effective starts in the first 100 days, Trump's second term wins out in the NewsNation poll. You think about what he has done on the border and what he has done, and I'll put it in big terms, DEI. He doesn't seem to be getting credit either for the speed or the effectiveness, like it or not, of what he did. Why is that?
Because of the economy. I mean, I think the reality is you're right. He's had a very impactful first 100 days. It's a dramatic contrast to President Biden. He's done a great job on the border. I think that if people support what he's done on DI, unfortunately, he's adopted traditional labor union Democrat trade policy. And I think that that's really hurting the economy. And I think that the Americans elected him to secure the border and the economy. And so I think that that's what's holding him back right now.
Rina, the flood the zone strategy of Trump 1.0 is on steroids, as are most things. Trump 2.0. He did a rally yesterday, ABC News interview, and then the 2-hour cabinet meeting today, plus our town hall. Is there any oxygen right now for Democrats?
Absolutely not, because it's action, action, action from Pennsylvania Avenue. And that's what I think the American people voted for. Even the people who were not still willing to admit they voted for Trump, they wanted this action. In a nutshell, this 100 days has been a sprint to reshape America's playbook. And in my view, that is the best thing that this country could be experiencing right now, because the period of inactivity that Biden fooled us with was so detrimental to how America is seen on the world stage that you needed a bombastic ball breaker like this guy, and he's doing it, and he's doing it well. Look at this Ukraine deal. I mean, it's a geopolitical chess move to secure resources. Who doesn't want that if the end game really is to push Russia away and stop this invasion into Ukraine? It's all good stuff.
Where is the lane, and we saw sort of some semblance right now, Cillizza, for Democrats when you have Trump who is willing to flood the zone A and engage on all of the things that typically a president who's having a hard time doesn't?
Yep, can't swing at every pitch. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I think they get sucked into these fights. You and I have talked about this on air and off air. Harvard, people don't know that Harvard got billions of dollars in federal funding. So whether you agree with him or disagree with him about that, that's a fight he'll win. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, there's a reason that Hakeem Jeffries has told his caucus that he doesn't want any more trips to El Salvador, because that is a winner for Donald Trump. Even DOGE, Musk colors this a little, but even DOGE, like most people go out on the street and say, is the federal government too big? People will say, yes. This is to Chris's point, the only one of the big four is the economy. And if he had just started on taxes and then done tariffs, we'd be having a different conversation. If the first 100 days was, can Donald Trump get his one big, beautiful bill through Congress? And
that's the question,
and you subtract the tariff part out of it, and that comes later in the year, I don't think he's at 80% approval. I don't think that's possible. But he could be in the high 40s, low 50s. But that's, I mean, again, if I was 6'10", I could dunk. I mean, it's like that's not the reality of the world.
You know what I didn't anticipate here, though, is the Democrats having nobody to counter all this action.
Oh, you didn't hear? Wait, hold on. Kamala Harris spoke today. And nobody
I'm sorry,
noticed.
I didn't know.
It is amazing how little attention that did get. I mean, I think it's worth.
Mark, take us behind the scenes of the strategy for Donald Trump right now to continue to double down on tariffs. Here he is talking about creating jobs during the town hall.
It actually creates jobs for the middle income. It's going to be better for the middle income. It's going to save our country because we're going to become rich again. Stephen, we lose so much money on trade. It's unbelievable.
O'Reilly really pressed him on a timeline for some of these deals. He said, I believe I have more time than O'Reilly thought he had. What are you hearing from Republicans on the Hill?
I think he probably does have more time because I think he has such a solid grasp of the Republican Party right now. I think he's bleeding independents, but I think his control of Republicans does give him more time. But I also think the policy is greatly flawed, so I'm not sure time is going to help him in the long run. I mean, again, this trade policy is what labor union Democrats advanced for decades, and Donald Trump has been very effective at winning over blue-collar voters into the Republican Party. But this trade agenda is one that I think is causing tremendous damage to the economy. I think the numbers out today were really bad. Consumer confidence down for 5 months in a row. GDP negative in the first quarter. I think that there's actually probably reporting that you see ships that are actually not coming to Los Angeles ports anymore, staying in Asia, diverting elsewhere. I think that it's not going to be good heading down the road.
Starwell, does Donald Trump not benefit immensely from the fact that we are experiencing a realignment of the political parties in America, and he is now at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue to pick and choose what issues he wants to fight on? I thought O'Reilly made that point as well.
So Mark raises a good point about this, which is the first Trump administration, Trump benefited enormously from resistance within his own party, right? The effective resistance within his own cabinet and within the Congress from, why did he get a tax plan? Other than the fact Mark Short worked for him. But
we have the answer sitting here.
But he had Paul Ryan, and there was back and forth. There was tension. There was pushback from Congress. Why did he get all those judges and Supreme Court justices? Mitch McConnell did a really good job up there. You talk to these people in Congress now, what do they say? Well, we got to see what whatever the president wants to do. And you go around the cabinet meeting and everybody says whatever the president wants to do. Trump is a better disruptor if he is facing resistance from competent people who will tell him no and push back on him. He doesn't have those people now.
I think that's exactly right. I think one of the best ways to understand him, I know everybody thinks like, oh, he's a puncher. He punched everybody in the face. He's actually kind of a counter puncher, I think, broadly speaking.
He'll tell you that, by the way.
He's good at, Joe Biden said blah, blah, blah. Boom. He's good at coming back at it. He's better as a foil in some, I know this is weird because he's such an oxygen eater, but he's better as a foil in some ways than as a lead actor. Like, I think he does want you to kind of punch and then see where your imbalances.
This is how he...
And it is hard when I mean, look, I know Democrats get up in arms about this, but the truth is, to Chris's point, the Republican Party up there, I mean, I saw Marco Rubio say the other day, like, well, I mean, we'll just see about Russia. I don't, like Marco Rubio is like a Russia hawk.
There's nothing that signifies this better than today's cabinet meeting. We were waiting for a moment to play this soundbite.
Oh, gosh.
Like this could be the greatest administration since the founding of the country.
What we have seen since your election and the inauguration has been nothing short of a recruiting renaissance.
Your first 100 days has far exceeded that of any other presidency in this country.
It's been a momentous 100 days with you at the helm.
I want to thank you for your vision, for your leadership.
He's actually doing the things that he promised that he would do.
Sort of the Aaron Sorkin writing aside, there is no question that every president wishes they had that kind of control over their party at any one time. Okay, I'm getting fair from everybody. If this town hall showed anything, and I think Cuomo, Bill O'Reilly, Stephen A. Smith did a great job representing this. I'll leave you with the last word. That Americans sort of really want this president to succeed. There was no one who was happy post Joe Biden. There is a real desire to see him succeed.
In general, yeah, because when the president succeeds, the country succeeds. I mean, it's simple logic here. But the one thing I took away from that town hall sort of ties into what you gentlemen had to say, which I sort of disagree with. You know, look, this administration doesn't care about allied unity. They care about domestic optics. And here we are saying, wow, this cabinet just reveres him and loves him. Well, didn't Joe Biden's cabinet do the same thing? Every president's cabinet loves them. But he's facing opposition, Trump, from global leaders this time. And that's what he's having to punch back with. So when I hear Carville say, I don't want to be in a country that makes T-shirts or something to that effect.
No, he said exactly that.
Yeah, okay, so I'm getting that right. I rolled my eyes because I think this country is good when it makes T-shirts and fighter jets. So I don't know where the debate is here about where we're going, but all I'm saying is that we need a little bit of short-term pain for that long-term gain. And I was never a fan of Trump, but I kind of am getting on board right now because I think there's a long-term
There's not a big list of people who are converting the way you are right now.
No,
if you look at the poll numbers, but you brought up short-term pain versus long-term gain. 42%, I'm willing to accept short-term economic pain, such as higher prices or slower growth, if it leads to a stronger economy or greater independence from countries like China. 58%, the government should prioritize addressing immediate issues such as inflation and job security. We cannot afford policies that harm people now, even if they may benefit in the long run. Lots of words on the screen. 58% of Americans say, I don't like short-term pain, even if I get long-term gain. Only 42% are signing up to storm the beaches at Normandy.
That looks like a drug disclosure. I can't.
We need a narrator to talk super fast over it.
I'm not convinced that's what it says. You're specifically saying China. And I think the president's message on his trade agenda has been confusing from the start. Sometimes it's because of fentanyl. Sometimes it's because we have a trade deficit. Sometimes it's because we're trying to lower trade barriers. If he'd been organized and said we're going to have a trade war to fight China, more people would be supportive. But he launched a trade war against the entire globe.
And I think that's, I hate to break everything down to messaging, because sometimes the policy is just a policy, but I do think, to Mark's point,
messaging is changing.
You would be better served if he had sold it a little bit on the front end and explained it even a little bit. The short-term pain thing started to come in once it was clear there was going to be short-term pain.
Yeah.
I think you got, you know, it's like you go to the doctor, they're like, this is going to pinch for a minute and then it'll be okay. I'm like, okay, it's going to pinch for a minute, it'll be okay. I'd rather that than it pinches and I'm like, when is this going to end?
Oh, so Sarah, I'll give you the last word here. And I thought it was interesting that O'Reilly kept pushing Trump on this, because I think O'Reilly really believes that the American people are scared and they have a limited amount of patience. The point, though, was Trump started to pivot and started talking about China, talking about how China's hurting more than we are. Can you remessage?
Well, what's the shelf life for a Donald Trump utterance? 90 seconds until the next interview, until the next conversation. And this is the problem whenever people talk about messaging, whenever people talk about what should this White House say, and Donald Trump will say, yeah, that sounds pretty good, and then he'll say it. And then 30 seconds later, he will say the opposite. If Howard Lutnick was the last person he talked to, comes out, we're all going to make iPhones here, we're going to have a trade war forever, and we're going to be a T-shirt making just full of looms, just full of looms in this country. And then, if he talks to Scott Bessent after that, he comes out and he says, we're doing this to get a deal, and we're going to live in a libertarian utopia of frictionless trade around the globe. It's whoever he talked to last is the message that comes out next.
All right, panel, thank you very much. Great having you both. Gentlemen, Rina, thank you very much.